in the terrorist attack.
As we've just been talking about, the government has been negotiating with the crossbenchers to secure support for their legislation to cut company tax. Now, earlier in the week, Senator David Leyonhjelm said that he'd support the bill if banks were exempt from the cut.
In response, Liberal Democrat Senator David Leyonhjelm threatened to withdraw support for the cuts. Leyonhjelm later backed away from his position, and Finance Minister Matthias Cormann confirmed that banks would not be excluded. For more on this and other political stories of the week, we're speaking now with Liberal Democrat David Leyonhjelm. Thanks so much for coming in. We'll get to the tax cuts in just a moment, but I want to start in Tasmania with the proposed weakening of the gun laws there. What do you make of that?
It's not really much of a weakening. What they're talking about is, so farmers are already allowed to use certain types of firearms. What they've proposed is that the workers who work on those farms can also use those sorts of firearms. It makes an awful lot of sense. If a farmer has to destroy stock or kill feral animals on their farm, then why can't someone who works for that farmer be able to do the same thing? That's the logic behind it. There's not really much of a weakening involved in this.
But it does allow greater access to self-loading rifles and pump-action shotguns. Bill Shorten has written to the Prime Minister saying he's concerned that essentially this goes against or doesn't comply with the National Firearms Agreement.
Well, number one, the National Firearms Agreement has no legal basis. It's just an agreement between the states. Bill Shorten can huff and puff all he likes about it. At the end of the day, if a state decides they don't want to cooperate with the National Firearms Agreement, that's up to them. But the other thing is, everybody who has a firearm, and there's about 1 million of us, I think, in Australia, plus all their families and so on, know this is a confected story. It has nothing to do with safety. And Bill Shorten has just alienated millions, probably, of retirees and pensioners and part pensioners over his dividend imputation. If he's now looking to alienate 1 million or more shooters and their families who know this is a load of nonsense, this is electoral suicide stuff.
But hang on, are you saying that those 1 million or so people that you say have a gun want self-loading rifles and pump-action shotguns?
No. What they know is that this is ridiculous, that there's not a weakening of the gun laws. New Zealand doesn't even have registration of shotguns and rifles. They still have pump actions, lever actions, semi-automatics and so on. They don't, no one runs around saying, oh, New Zealand's about to have something drastic happen. It's nonsense.
In Tasmania, Will Hodgman didn't release these plans in the election campaign. He released them just before polling day. Does that seem a little bit sneaky, given the history in Tasmania?
Well, I don't think the history in Tasmania has got anything to do with it, but is it a little bit sneaky? I thought it was fairly good politics. At the end of the day, firearm owners will vote according to that issue. All the people who don't like guns, who jump up and down about gun laws being too weak and wanting more controls and so on, they don't vote the issue. In fact, the bulk of them vote for the Greens already.
How could they, if it wasn't released until just before polling day? They didn't know. True
enough, yes, I suppose that's true. But I'm not sort of trying to explain Will Hodgman's tactics, but I thought it made sense that the people who mattered, the people who are voting on that issue, who are prepared to vote on the issue, are the firearms owners, the licensees, and they needed to know. The rest of the country, the rest of the state, they wouldn't change their vote because of it anyway. That's the history of gun politics.